Time change 2016. It's time to fall back again. It's time to change the clocks again. Most in the US adjust their clocks backward and forward by an hour twice a year in the spring and then in the fall. Well, the time to fall back is upon us. Clocks will be adjusted from 2 a.m. to 1 a.m. on Sunday, November 6, 2016. Sunrise and sunset will be about an hour earlier starting on Sunday than the day before. There will be more light in the morning. Optimists also look at it as an extra hour of sleep, but some decry the earlier nightfalls. Most of the country will be reverting to what's called standard time overnight. It may seem tedious to adjust every clock in the house twice a year, but the advent of standard time was actually quite a revolution when it was first taken up in the late 1800s. Here are a few tidbits about the institution of standard time according to the book Seize the Daylight, The Curious and Contentious Story of Daylight Saving Time by David Perrow. Before the institution of standard time, many cities went by their own timetables. For instance, Perrow wrote, when it was noon in Chicago, it was 12:31 in Pittsburgh, 12:24 in Cleveland, 12:17 in Toledo, and 12:07 in Indianapolis, and 11:50 in St. Louis. Perrow wrote, the relaxed pace of travel, the lack of instant communication, the inherent inaccuracy of contemporary clocks, and the less frantic pace of life all made minor time variations unimportant. That began to change when the telegraph and the railroads came along. Then the varying timetables began to cause confusion. Railroads in England first hatched the idea of a standardized time, and it became the rule across Britain. Other countries soon adopted the idea, including the US, which at one time had more than 70 railroad time zones. In the US, Perrow wrote, it was not uncommon for railway passengers to adjust their watches more than 20 times en route. But eventually, 4 separate time zones were defined in the US, and railroad officials voted to adopt standard time in 1883. Standard time was at first called railroad time. Sunday was chosen initially to adjust time because, according to Perrow, it was the day with the fewest trains running, and the transition would cause the least inconvenience and done most safely. Standard time was adopted for railroads by agreement in 1883, and the change was set for noon on November 18th that year. It was called the Day of Two Noons. People nationwide gathered to synchronize their watches. As noon approached on the eastern part of each time zone, they moved their watches back anywhere from 1 to 30 minutes to the new standard time, and then experienced a second noon. Those on the western end of a time zone lost a few minutes out of their days. The change instituted 4 standardized time zones instead of 53, according to Perrow. Standard time eventually was adopted by much of the population as well. Standard time stayed the general rule until daylight saving time was brought in during World War I, although Benjamin Franklin first developed the idea in 1784. Daylight saving time will return on March 12, 2017.